Hey gang, it's Deltia from Deltia's Gaming back with the T3 build. This is a full guide here on video. So gear, skills, combat, everything about the T3 Dragonknight tank build as it's finalized. As you can see from this video, you can do top end content with this build. This is Veteran Dragonstar Arena. And at this point in the game, I've tanked both Veteran Dragonstar Arena, Sanctum Ophidia Trials, and really have conquered almost everything in the game that there is to do. So I wanted to share what I've learned over that time and kind of help you guys develop your own Dragonknight tank. This build, like I said earlier, is going to go over as I show you what to do. I have a lot of other gameplay videos on Twitch and or YouTube, so if you want to see it in action more so, feel free to check that out. Otherwise, this build is going to go over combat, skills, gear, and show you what it's like to rock the T3 build in action. Alright, I want to talk about skills a little bit as T3 has changed as I've done maybe some of the hardest content in the game, Bet DSA, Serpent Trial, and a bunch of different scenarios that you may swap in abilities and gear, but really the skills are pretty much the same with a couple different morphs, a couple things in different slots. So I want to start with bar 1, which is what I consider my main bar. This is your standard lockdown enemies buff, keep up your defensive, keep on blocking. So we're going to work left to right in kind of the order that I cast these abilities. Number 1 is Volatile Armor. I love this ability. This morph here, Volatile, makes damage happen like an AoE as soon as you cast it. Most people take Razor, but I really like Volatile because every little piece of damage you do to the boss is going to cause it more and more aggro on you. And also, you're going to get some ultimate if it crits. So the more ultimate we have, the safer I feel the tank can handle any type of threat, and every little piece of damage helps. So I like it. Gets good attention, gets some aggro, gets some ultimate. It's a great solid morph, and it adds tons and tons of armor. Also returns physical damage to the enemy, which is really important considering most bosses do a heavy attack and you can return some of that. So this is what it looks like. The other cool part, the scales in the back are cool somewhat, but it's a nice visual indicator to let you know that it's up. So you can see the bottom, my FTC shows it 8 seconds remaining. That's another benefit of this ability. You get 20 seconds on a cast with this thing. So you're not going to have to cast this over and over and over. You're probably wondering what this big blue beam is. This is part of my Gear, the Dwarven Spear, which I'm going to get to later. It's a drop set in Darkshade Cavern. So it's really important to this build. Number 2 is our taunt, our main taunt, Pierce Armor. I like this because it does reduce targets' armor and spell resistance by 43% for a long time, and taunts target for 15 seconds. So as you can see, it reduces their armor and spell resistance for only 12, but the taunts for 15. So the way I like to use this is taunt every about 10-12 seconds to make sure that debuff is up on the boss. Now, the problem with this ability, number 1, it uses stamina, which we use for to block. Number 2 is that it's not ranged, so you have to be really close. There's a couple ways to deal with that, but I really like this over the Inner Beast morph. I'm going to get to why and how to use that eventually, because it doesn't come with a crappy synergy. It comes with a really powerful debuff. So you're really going to want to put this on targets to eliminate that synergy that no one really wants to hit. So that's why I use Pierce Armor. And here, Choking Talons, I haven't got it morphed. I haven't got leveled up to 4 yet, because I just recently found out, due to my buddy Parfex, that this damage reduction on this morph, instead of burning, applies to bosses. So imagine that. You can maintain this. It's only 4 seconds, so it's a high magic cost. This actually gives, a good reason for someone to play all light armor tank. If you can keep this 4-second debuff on the boss, that's 15% or more damage reduction. So as you level this up, you're going to get more and more damage reduction. I'm using heavy right now, so I can't cast this a whole bunch, but in critical situations where the group may die, 4 seconds of huge reduced damage is just amazing. Not to mention, it does still CC the enemies and do some damage, plus it gives us energy. So for a main tank like me, I really think this is the better morph. If you're playing DPS solely or something like that, maybe go with the other one, but man, it's just the damage reduction is too powerful to pass up. I didn't even know about it. Another ability that I changed stances, which isn't morphed all the way, leveled all the way, is defensive stance. Now, I used to take Absorb Magic and thought that was the best thing ever, blah, 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 I gotta heal, that sort of thing. But what I like about this morph now is it stuns the caster. and that's about 4 seconds stun. So not only are you not going to take any damage, but it's going to stun that caster and keep them at bay. It's kind of a weaker version of the Dragonknight's wings or reflective scales, dragon fire scales, but it uses stamina, and it comes with block mitigation and block cost reduction. So you're always going to want to have this on your main bar, in my opinion. Regardless of the morph you take, this ability is very, very strong. I just love it for the stun. I mean, it's a range stun, and people are going to be beating on you. So having this up is a good stamina dump if you're taking a lot of range targets out, and it could really save your team with that extra stun, especially in Vet DSA, which I'm in right now. Lastly, if there are active abilities to screen Dragon's Blood, you can't stop but help this ability is too powerful not to have in your bar. Stamina recovery, health recovery, and it's a monster self-heal. So it's just too powerful to not have. I mean, if you're about to die, you pop this thing, 33% of your missing health. I mean, that could be 1,000 self-heal. It's probably the best self-heal in the game, in my opinion. Downside is it has a huge magic cost. So 422, if we look at how much magic I have right now, 1,900, that's a good portion. You know, that's a fourth or math? A third, I will say that. Someone's going to leave me a comment on that. About a third of our magic. So you really want to leave around 400 magic at all times. So just in case you need emergency heals. So don't just spam, magic abilities. You're spamming talons. Oh my god, this is so much fun. I can't die. Now I can't cast. So make sure you have enough to cast. And there's my buddy again. We're going to get to that spear later. So it's pretty cool. You're going to love it. Okay, another ability here, Pack Leader. This is the morph in the Werewolf tree. So Werewolf has some really powerful advantages right now. And you only take the poison damage when you're in Werewolf form. So even when I'm taking Sanctum Ophidia, the Serpent Trial, which is basically all poison damage, I'm not taking any more extra damage. I don't have to have any poison resist. It comes with a stamina regeneration, and these passives here generate 6 ultimate every 3 seconds by taking damage. That's insane. So that's why it's on my main bar at my ultimate slot, is because I'm getting awesome stamina return. The part of tanking that people don't understand is that your ultimate generation is based on crit and how hard you hit. So as a tank, you're not having a lot of crit, you're not hitting very hard. So it's hard to generate ultimate unless you use this. So that ability here is in the Werewolf tree. You don't have to have the Pack Leader morph. You can just have the standard ultimate, but you really need to get this up to 8 in Werewolf line. I have a separate guide for that to really get the full benefit of having this ability. That being said, I do swap this out sometimes for Standard of Might, just in really particular situations where we have to do damage or everyone dies. But 90% of the time, I really like the Werewolf passive. So that's kind of bar 1. And I'm going to go into Dragonstar Arena later and solo a couple rounds, or 1 round at least, hopefully, and show you how I do this. But the premise behind this bar is buff up. So I got my buffs, and now we're good. So we block and we kind of just move around taunting targets. If we get a bunch of them in a group, I'll use talons and that sort of thing. So that's bar 1. I really look at my buffs all the time while I'm moving around out of red circles, because as they fall off, it's really important to recast them appropriately. So you have 2 20-second buffs, Volatile Armor, Green's Dragon's Blood, with Defensive Posture being a 30-second buff. So when you're buffing yourself, just think of the time. You need to use Defensive Postures first, because it has a 30-second, then Volatile Armor, then Green's Dragon's Blood, lock and block. That's how I do that. So don't get too carried away casting Choking Talons, because that sucker will drain your magic really fast. That's kind of bar 1. So let's talk about bar 2. Bar 2 is more of our, buff bar, magic dump, that sort of thing, utility bar with our ultimate that we want to use. Number 1 is Ignis Weapons. I just love this ability. It's just fantastic. It adds tons and tons of damage to the party. It builds ultimate out of combat, and it restores stamina. So a lot of people don't factor this in when slotting abilities as a Dragonknight, but a couple really key passes that you need to get, and people always ask me, what passes do you take, Deltia? All of them. All of them. They're all good. So, Mountain's Blessing. Gain 2 additional ultimate from when activating an Earth Art ability. So if you're just sitting there not doing anything, look at my ultimate go up. Just spam cast it. It has a low cost too, so you can sit there and get ultimate up out of combat, or in combat if you need to. Another thing people don't factor in, Restores 5% stamina when activating Earth and Heart ability. Really? So let's just dodge roll around. Drain her stamina. I don't have any. Boom, 5%. Boom, 5%. Boom, 5%. So look at that. So when I run out of the ability to block because like 5 things are beating on me and I have no more stamina, boom, I just cast this. I just magic dump and it can still block. I'm still holding block while I cast this. So I'm getting all the benefits, and then my little droid comes out. I go up to full stamina right away. I can block 30 things. And that's how I do it, is 5%. People don't factor that in as a Dragonknight tank. And I think it's a huge undervalued ability and passive. So that's how I use that. Number 2 is Inner Beast. I hate this taunt in its current form. I think 1.6 will change this, but as you do it right now, it's really nice. It uses Magicka. It's a range taunt. The downside is that it comes with the synergy, which basically locks up your DPS or whoever hits the synergy for 2 seconds. That's the problem with it, is that when that radiate goes, if you're a DPS and you hit it, you're locked up for 2 seconds, so it's a DPS loss. And if someone's beating on you, you can't block through it, so you might just die. That's why I don't like using this. I use it sparingly. I do a lot of bar swaps, so it's not exactly the easiest thing to play, but there's going to be a time where you're going to have to range taunt. There will be. So it's just too invaluable not to have on my back bar. Number 3, Cinderstorms. It has a huge snare, mischance, and it does a decent amount of damage over time with an 18-second duration. So it's a long buff, or debuff, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, the circle is pretty wide. The radius, I think, is 6 meters or so. So you can be in this area. And that's kind of how I do that. What I do is, on bar 1, I'll lock them in with Choking Talons, I'll swap, and then I'll put Cinderstorm on them. So now, as they try to leave or do whatever, they're snared, they have a mischance, and they're taking damage. And it's a really nasty combination for when you get a bunch of targets on you. And this Cinderstorm works against bosses. So 30% mischance, that's going to save you a lot of stamina and maybe a lot of damage. It might just save your life, and it has me. So I think it's too valuable not to use. Oh, well, also guess what it does? It's an Earth and Heart ability, so it restores stamina. So 2 abilities right there. That's why your stamina is always going to be pretty high as a Dragonknight tank with this build. Okay, 4th ability here, Crippling Slash. Deals damage, snares, reduces target damage by 15%, and generates ultimate. Yay! So I consider this a stamina dump. If we have excessive stamina or we're not in very much trouble, I'll swap to bar 2 and just smash this thing a bunch of times. It does decent damage. It's going to debuff the enemy a couple different ways, snare them, and then also damage, but it's generating 5 ultimate. So let's say a big, huge, nasty DPS phase is coming, or I know I'm going to take a lot of damage and I'm close to an ultimate. I'll go in between using that Ignis Weapons and then Crippling Slash. So Ignis Weapons is a way to build ultimate up using just a cast, and then Crippling Slash is a way to build ultimate using a stamina-based ability. So those in conjunction with each other is basically you can just keep using Ignis to get more stamina to do Cripple Slash. It's like almost an endless loop where you can almost always have an ultimate up, which I think is the best defensive ultimate in the game. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Before that, Fiery Extended Chains. It's kind of a high magic cost. It's a pull. It doesn't work on bosses, but what it does do on bosses is very important. It kind of works like a ranged taunt, not exactly, but it's a good way to open up combat. So when I'm closing on a boss, I start actually on bar 2. So let's say this bookshelf is a boss. I come all the way back here. As I get close, I will use Extended Chains, swap to bar 1, buff, and then melee taunt with it. That way I avoid the Inner Beast taunt and having that radiate on with like 11 other people beating on the boss. And that's kind of how I use that. Also, you need to pull targets in that are in the surrounding area, which I'm going to show you later on how to do this combat. That's really going to save your DPS. I mean, it's just a great way to bring a Dragonknight in. So as far as flex spots go, almost all of this stuff is just too invaluable to flex in or out. Extended Chains, I almost think, is a mandatory ability because I've lost aggro before from over taunting, and this somehow gets them back. So I think that's almost essential. If I were to flex one thing out, it'd be Cinderstorms on this bar. If I were to flex one thing out here, oh man, they're all pretty good. You might have to do Volatile Armor, though that's a huge buff. It's just really, really tough to swap that out or anything out. So I usually just stick with this type of stuff if I'm main tanking. If I'm not main tanking, I can do an off bar, which I'll show you later. So the whole build, why are we getting tons of ultimate? Why? Corrosive Armor. It's the other morph that I usually take, and I didn't realize how powerful this was. So it caps incoming damage. That's great. 10 seconds. You're basically God mode, 10 seconds, and you're doing flame damage around enemies. The thing that I didn't understand was so powerful is it reduces weapon damage of nearby enemies. So what that means is those bosses, weapon damage. Guess what bosses use a lot of the times? Weapon damage, heavy attacks. The serpent is all poison damage, which is physical or weapon damage. So this is almost as powerful as a Nova to debuff the boss. Not to mention, you do damage and you almost can't die for 10 seconds. So that's why it's at level 1. I really did not understand how powerful this was until I started talking with some other DK tanks. And this is my go-to ultimate for this build. It's too powerful. So let me give you an example. Last night we did Veteran DSA, and we had a couple new people on there, and it was going pretty good. We got to the last boss, and we started struggling. So finally we got our act together, and we got the boss down to 4%. Everyone died but me. Everyone. And everyone's huffing, puffing, we're all mad. Oh my god, life's terrible, we're going to have to do this again. Not so fast. I had ultimate up, I had corrosive armor up. So what did I do? I didn't panic. We had a couple flame atronachs, we had the boss, everything's beating on me. Boom, pop corrosive armor. Now that boss is doing far less damage. And I'm almost invincible for 10 seconds. I ran over to the nearest DPS, rezzed him, he got up, we killed that boss. It was almost an impossible situation to come back from, but this ultimate saved our entire team from another 15-minute massive battle. It's that powerful. It really is. So that's the T3 skills. I can't tell you enough how much I've really tinkered with this, going on different morphs. I've got a lot of awesome feedback from other Dragoknights, so it's been great to kind of learn. And this is really the final build until 1.6 arrives. So now let's go ahead and jump into gear. There's my little buddy. My Dwarven Spear. There he is, giving me basically unlimited magic. Okay, so we're talking about gear here. Same spot, same bat channel, same bat time. And I flex a lot of these pieces of gear in or out. Actually just two, the head pieces and the shoulder. Because that's really going to give me some flexibility in what I'm going up against and or what content I'm doing. So almost 90% of this gear stays the same with the alternate here in my heads pieces. So I want to get to what I'm wearing first. 2 5 pieces that are very important. The Hiss Spark, which gives, the 5 piece gives 18% dodge chance by blocking. And then Footman's, which can be found in Dragon's Arena. Yes, I have Exploration on my belt. You can't avoid that. Increases block mitigation by 12%. These are, I consider, the 2 best tanking sets in the game right now. I'm also wearing 5 heavy and then 2 light with the Engine Guardian set currently in my slot. So let's get to the Engine Guardian. I definitely need to get a better headpiece as well fitted isn't exactly the best. But 10% on casting the ability to summon a Dwemer that restores health, stamina, or magicka every twice a second. And it's just a ridiculous amount. A couple things that are key on this. Number one, you don't get to pick health, stamina, or magicka. So it's not like whatever you're lowest on. So it will be random. Which is okay, because as a tank you need 3 resources. So as a magic-based user, this is pretty good. Stamina-based user, it's pretty good. But really, it's awesome for a tank. And then 10% on an ability use. Ability use could be magic. It could be stamina, like this. So it could be a taunt, or a stamina-based ability right there. So the beam color is going to be what it's giving you back. So as you can see, it's giving me HP. Green, blue, red, obviously. At almost no point when this comes out am I disappointed if it's giving me health, stamina, or magicka. So I use this setup here when I'm tanking basically Veteran Dragonstar Arena, maybe a dungeon, that type of thing. Because what I really need in that particular instance is more resources. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be able to heal myself if things go bad, do a little damage, that type of thing. So that's really what I do there. When it gets to nasty nitty-gritty time and we have to go up against Serpent, what I'll do there is swap in for this Blood Spawn set. 6% chance one hit to gain tons of armor, spell resistance, and 25 ultimate. So the key here is when I have this set, I'm going to basically be able to have magma armor or corrosive armor up at all times when it gets to a really critical phase. And that's important because number one, I can debuff the enemy. Number two, I can almost never die essentially, and I'm going to have a higher chance to get spell and armor resistance. So it's really meant for when I try tank trials, because that is you're not really so dependent on self-healing. You really have someone dedicated to healing you, and you just need to not die. So the best way I found not to die is have an ultimate ready, and that's kind of how I set that gear up. A couple of things else on the gear. People ask me my attributes, and I get endless questions about my attributes, and really this works best for me. I don't go super hardcore into health. I mean, I've seen tanks with 3,700 health and that sort of thing, you know, great for them, but with blocking, I've never died by a 3,200 hit while I'm blocking. I've died because I stood in the red, I didn't have enough health to heal myself, didn't have enough magic to block or stamina to block, whatever. That's how I've died, not by having, you know, less than 3,700 health. So for me, I like to do a little bit better balance here. The stamina, you notice I don't have any points in here. Why not? Because I have enough stamina regeneration once I have Green Dragon's Blood up. As you see, I'm almost soft capped in that. I'm soft capped in health recovery. So really, I don't need a whole lot of stamina because I'm going to use stamina reduction stuff on my jewelry to get away with blocking easily. I need a lot of magic. I need a big magic pool because I'm not using a whole lot of light pieces. So a big magic pool allows me to cast 3 or 4 abilities, but another tank maybe has more health is going to cast 1 or 2. I like to be independent. That's what I want to do because not the tank, you know, is going to have to heal themselves at some point. And if you have the flexibility to heal yourself reliably, it's just going to save your team from a lot of wipes, I believe. Other people do it differently. This is just what's worked for me. So as far as traits and that sort of thing go, you want Reinforced if you can get it, obviously, or Divines is another good one. The jewelry is really different. So I go Locket of the Footman, Footman's on all the pieces, and I have Magic Recovery, Stamina Recovery, and Reduced Blocking Cost. I have a lot of alternate pieces that I swap in and out. So if I'm going to go into Vet DSA, the final round, I will swap in my Flame Resistance jewelry. If I'm going to go into something where I know I'm going to have to block, you know, multiple mobs, like maybe round 9, I'll swap in the Reduced Block Cost. These things will give me a little bit more wiggle room for encountering certain different things. So it may take you a while to get all this gear. I definitely understand that. And I'm going to talk about leveling and how to go over that sort of thing if you're not at endgame. So don't worry about that. So that's kind of the quick nasty gear setup. As far as sword, shield, that type of thing goes, you know, your enchant isn't that important on your sword because you shouldn't be attacking a lot. You really should be blocking most of the time. But I do like a little damage bubble. There's probably a better one than that, but hardening works for me. And I do go double sword and shield. I've tried Destruction Staff or Resto on the back bar and I ended up getting killed more times than not when I didn't mean to. I also have another set in here, which is my meteor set right here for DPS, because a lot of times I do play DPS, or even in Serpent you only need 1 tank for most of the fights, so I'll swap and do DPS. I mean, this DPS setup here, the Shooting Star build that I have, just parsed at 1500 DPS. So without changing any morphs, without changing any stats, without changing anything, you can tank and DPS effectively. That's what separates this build from others. So let's get in there and start showing you how this is done. Alright, we're going to go into Dragonstar Arena solo. Some of you may think I'm crazy, and I probably am, but it's a good kind of way to show you. I'm doing non-bet just because I just want to talk and kind of go over combat a little bit. I got my trusty dog there, I love him, Shaggy. So how do I tank this? This is where I spend most of my time in Bet Dragonstar Arena. I really like the 4-man content, or woman content I should say, in this game, and this is where I've kind of trained myself to be better tank. This arena is all about resources. So first things first, let's start out blocking, get our buffs up. I do some range taunts here, and as my main responsibility is to chains in enemies and or pick up the melee. So they're all clumped up here. It's a good time to drop a Cinderstorm, swap, and Choking Talons. Now I got them locked in. So now I'm bashing. I'm reapplying my taunt with my physical taunt to make sure that that gets done. And I'm just reapplying my buffs and my debuffs. And I'm bashing a lot. Notice that. A lot of tanks do not bash properly. Your job is to interrupt. Like that. So if you see that little thing over their head, make sure to bash the crap out of them. Boom. Bash. And look, I'm not really taking any damage. My trusty friend comes up just in time as I run out of stamina. Life's good. So I have a healer in the range. I'm going to practice basically how I taunt. How I start an opening taunt on a boss. So this healer out here, let's practice. So I buff up here. I come in, I do extended chains, I swap bars, taunt. That's how I open up a normal thing. As you can see here, I got 10 million things beaten on me. I'm not taking any damage. No worries here. So let's just say that I am going to run out of stamina and I'm about to die, even though that's not the case. Switch. Boom! Corrosive armor, baby. I get a shot of resources, which allows me to basically put down Cinder Storms, get all my buffs, get all my debuffs up, and just do damage. So I do damage with Cripple. Running out of stamina, so I'm going to fire up Ignis Weapons a couple times. Use a potion. Make sure these guys aren't just free casting. Lock them down. Keep on buffing. Look, my ultimate's about up. It's up again. So this is why the T3 is really powerful. I have almost limitless resources. I have almost limitless ultimate regeneration, or at the point where I know I'm going to have some. If I'm about out of stamina because I'm blocking for days and bashing, I can just fire up Ignis Weapons a couple times. I'm good. If that gets rough, I use a potion. So I'm just going to reapply these buffs and debuffs. Locking them down with Talons in the Cinderstorm. There comes my friend to restore magic. Thank you, friend. So obviously this is going to be much faster with the group, but as you can see, my original premise of being an oasis of self-healing is realized. And guess what? Got a corrosive armor up again. So that's the strength of this build. I'm going to do one more round just to kind of talk again, make sure that we understand this fully. And don't do what I'm doing, block. And then only attack here if you can knock them down like that. Block. The trick to using Dragon's Blood effectively is to wait till you're down about to 30% health, then use it. Because it does scale off of how much health you already have. So don't pop it when you're at 80% or you're not going to get the full effect of it. So I can't do a whole lot of damage, but they can't kill me. Alright, one more round. So as you can see, the whole point here is tons and tons of resources, ultimates when it's game time, and I can block for days. You are the self-sustain oasis. In a group, your main job here is to pick up the highest threat. So usually that means melee targets with big, huge channels. If those aren't the highest threat, pull people in like I'm doing right there. Do the Cinderstorm combo. Make sure your buffs are up, which I didn't do. And if things get bad, boom, Magma Armor. So once I pop Magma Armor, I'm still going to work on generating ultimate, because that's what's going to save me in the end. So they're reflecting some of these abilities, making sure bash. These guys are sure casting a lot. Look, boom, another cast. So I'm getting pretty low here. That's when I usually pop a Tri-Potion. Make sure that I don't screw up. The more times you cast, the more times you have to proc that little guy. And that's going to come out right there, give me some health. So I don't really have to worry about my health right now. I can just manage my resources. So I'm getting really low on health. There's tons of people around. Guess what? Corrosive armor, baby. You can't kill me for about 10 seconds. So this is where I do some damage. So I swap abilities. Use a potion. So look, I'm basically full. I'm running out of stamina. Guess what? My little droid comes out. Life's good. Lock them down with Talons again. Make sure my buffs are up. And just keep on bashing. Smash and bash, baby. Look. 80% of my ultimate again. I mean, isn't this crazy? This is a tank. You are not supposed to generate this much ultimate as a tank. This crazy, dude. Boom! Fire it up! Gosh, this build is awesome. I love playing a tank in this game. It is hard playing a tank, so I mean, if you're stuck with it and getting frustrated, just realize that your job is not to pick up every single mob like I'm doing. That's ultimately really not your job. Your job is to pick up the highest threat. So this gladiator here, he is the highest threat because he can basically AoE cleave like that and kill everyone. That's your job. So if people are getting on you, your job is not to click one button and taunt everything. It's really not. That's why I think the game is so much fun as a tank. Because everyone's going to have to deal with pressure. It's just going to be, it's going to happen. So don't blame your little tank. Things go bad. We finish them up here. I do use a lot of potions because why not? That much resources, it's just too hard not to use them. It's too advantageous, I should say. Got my ultimate up. Now I'm using my ultimate pretty willingly here, but I do save it quite a bit for when it gets rough. But since we're doing normal and I can solo this for the most part, just use it when I need to. As you can see the weakness, which is damage. But that's okay. We're a tank. We're supposed to do our tank job, which is not die. And that we can do a good job of. So in that DPS phase here, what I'm doing is swapping in between my crippling and then Ignis weapons. That's going to generate ultimate. So I'm always constantly working on getting ultimate up if I can't kill someone or it's not the round's over or whatever. You always want to have that safety net with corrosive armor that can really save you or your allies. Bang. So that's combat with the T3. For those of you who are just starting out in Elder Scrolls Online, or you want to re-roll Dragonknight, or you're struggling with it, you can do the T3 build, though. It's going to take some time to get all the skills, to get all the gear, all that sort of thing. So what I recommend while leveling or just starting out is to use a restoration staff first. The reason why. The whole premise of this idea is self-healing, which is through Green Dragon's Blood. It's the third ability in the Draconic Powers skill line. So if you're starting out, it's going to take a while until you get that powerful self-heal. So until you get that, you really need a restoration staff with just healing springs. That alone can keep you up and survive just almost anything while you're leveling. Once you get rid of the healing springs, maybe around level 15, you get 2 weapons. You got to go sword and board. Sword and shield, these 2 first abilities and the third are going to be your friend. Really, the taunt's great. It does do damage and it debuffs them. Crippling slash is amazing. Does pretty decent damage and it debuffs them. So when you're out soloing, this is going to be awesome. So when I'm soloing, a couple things that I think about doing or while I'm leveling. 99% of the mobs can be stunned. So stuns are very, very important. CCs, stuns. And then if you're going to play a melee, you have to have some sort of stun. If you're going to play a caster or a ranged bow, let's say, you're going to need a way to snare the enemy, slow them down. So a couple options that you can have. Choking Talons, obviously, this you get really, really soon. So it's something that you can do right away. It's going to be a high magic cost. So I recommend when you start out the game to play a lot of light armor. I really do, until you start getting some of these self-heals and passives. Speaking of passives, take them all. Prioritize what's best. I can't tell you in every situation what's going to be best. Block damage, 10%, that sounds pretty good to me. It's something you might want to take early. So you get those type of things. This Obsidian Shard, it gets a lot of crap, but it actually could be a decent stun. And then you got your oh crap moment here, Corrosive Armor, so that's the first ultimate I would take. You have a lot of outside abilities. I see a lot of people leveling that do use extended chains. I don't like that tactic so much. I like to go to them. So Shield Assault, it takes a while to get, but when you do it, it's a really nice stun that you can kind of charge in and stun someone. Some outside abilities that are going to help you are some from the Fighters Guild. Your main storyline is going to be a lot of the times focused on Daedra or Undead. So Silver Shard is the first ability. It's really powerful, so think about using that. Another really good ability is the Ruin here. I take Scolding, but the other morph is Volatile, which will stun everyone. I mean, once you get this, no one can even touch you half the time. So really think about leveling your Mage Guild up by getting those books. Some of these are more advanced abilities. I mean, even some of these PvP abilities are useful too. So let's just recap real quick. What you need is a way to do damage. I like Unstable Flame, but really Engulfing Flame is great because it's an AoE, so you can use that with Sword and Shield. You can use that with a bow. You can use that with a two-hander. You don't have, and you have to be up close. So if you're playing melee, that's a great way to do damage that is reasonable to get right away. You're going to have some self-healing. Green Dragon's Blood. Till you get that, use a Restoration Staff. You're going to have some CC. Choking Talent is a powerful one. Maybe even Burning Talents while you're starting out for extra damage. And you're going to have some way to stun them or buff yourself. Ignis Weapons is a really powerful self buff with a lot of armor, a lot of damage. And then Obsidian Shield, another good, strong single target stun. And then make sure you have your ultimate, one or two ready, so that way you just basically can't die. And finally, you want to put one of each skill on your bar. So like one from Earth and Heart, one from Draconic Power, one from Ardent Flame. That way they level at roughly the same time. That gives you 2 slots to play with. So I would go with, maybe a Sword and Shield ability, and then maybe a bow or a ranged ability if you want. Something like that, so that way you're always progressing 2 skill lines. And that's really my tips for the Dragonknight leveling. I struggled with the Dragonknight leveling until I got Green Dragon's Blood. Then I was soloing dolmens and doing all that sort of stuff. So that's really just the key for this build, getting that, and then you become ultra powerful. So I hope this helped. Thanks for watching my video. I really appreciate all you guys coming out and supporting the site. Feel free to subscribe. Tell me what you like, what you don't like about this video. Leave me a comment. And come and visit my site, deltiusgaming.com, for all the latest news and builds. Thanks.